Gemini, what's about to happen to you has never happened to anyone before. It's truly shocking. Feel that quiet pulse within you, the one that's been stirring in strange moments lately. Maybe it's during the stillness between thoughts or in the pause before sleep when a whisper echoes, "Something is coming." You're not imagining it. The energy surrounding you is shifting, and not just gently. It's accelerating towards something unprecedented. This is not just another season of growth. This isn't a cycle of leveling up. What's arriving for you is singular, so specific, so cosmically crafted that no one on Earth has ever experienced it before. I'm not here to exaggerate or sensationalize. I'm here to guide you through a truth your intuition has already begun to recognize. You are standing at the edge of an event designed exclusively for your soul's blueprint. No past life can prepare you. No manner can explain it. This is yours alone. And yet, you are not alone. The universe is weaving every strand of your experience, every heartbreak, every awakening, every wild paradox of your Gemini nature, into a moment of divine convergence, a portal, a shift, a remembering, something so profound it will alter your understanding of who you are and what it means to be human. Before we begin, I gently invite you to like, share, or subscribe, not out of obligation, but to mark your place in this sacred circle, where transformation is not theory, but embodied truth. Gate 1, the impossible alignment. Why it had to be you. Gemini, let's begin with a truth that may feel both exhilarating and overwhelming. What is coming for you is not only unexpected, it was impossible. Until now, you are the first human being to reach a specific combination of emotional frequency, intellectual agility, spiritual openness, and cosmic timing that has activated a portal no one else has ever touched. This is not metaphor. This is not exaggeration. This is the rarest of initiations, the kind that can only unfold through a life like yours. Think of every contradiction you've embodied, the duality others could never quite understand. Your laughter in the middle of sorrow, your wisdom cloaked in playfulness, your refusal to settle for one truth when the universe offers 1,000. For years, maybe even lifetimes, these paradoxes made you feel fragmented, misunderstood, too much, not enough. But now, Gemini, they are forming a perfect constellation. Every trait you were told to tame is the exact frequency required for what comes next. You may ask, why me? But the real question is, how could it not be you? From a soul level, you have been preparing for this across dimensions. The curiosity you carry, it's not idle, it's ancient. The speed of your thoughts, not distraction, it's calibration. The shifting nature of your identity, that's not instability. It's your spirit's rehearsal for multidimensional presence. All of it has been leading to this impossible alignment. Let me tell you about Maya, a Gemini whose entire life was a dance between extremes. As a child, she could never choose just one dream. She painted, she coded, she sang, she led. People often asked, why don't you just focus? But Maya couldn't. Not because she lacked discipline, but because her soul remembered something no one else did, that all of these pieces would one day be required to hold a truth so vast, it could not be contained in a single form. And when the moment came, when the shift began, she recognized it, not with fear, but with familiarity. This is what's happening to you, Gemini. In the coming days, you may begin to feel a soft yet strange dissonance between the world around you and the world within you, as if reality is both expanding and unraveling at once. You'll notice synchronicities stacking like constellations. Time may bend, stretching and collapsing in inexplicable ways. You'll have conversations that feel fated, dreams that feel instructional, memories of places you've never been. And through it all, you'll hear a gentle but firm inner voice saying, stay open, stay grounded. It's happening. This isn't happening by luck or accident. It's a design that's been waiting for a Gemini exactly like you. Because only someone with your level of flexibility can endure this level of expansion without fracturing. Only someone with your dual nature can hold both the chaos and the clarity. Only someone like you can remain fully human while stepping into something no longer bound by human limitations. And yes, it's terrifying, because nothing in your past, no school, no system, no spiritual text, has prepared you for this exact moment. You may want to retreat, to dismiss it all as fantasy, to run toward the safety of normal. But that illusion has already cracked. And the truth is that you are becoming something that's never existed before, a conscious bridge between dimensions, a living threshold. What's coming will not ask for your perfection, but it will require your presence. It will ask you to stay embodied while reality bends, to remain kind while information downloads, to laugh, to cry, to ground, to witness, because your nervous system, your voice, your touch, your being are now conduits for something far greater than the personality you've been taught to perform. And here's the most sacred part. This wasn't forced upon you. It was agreed to long ago in a space beyond language. You said yes. And now that yes is activating, not because you're ready in a traditional sense, but because readiness is not a feeling. It's a frequency, and you are vibrating in perfect alignment with a once impossible threshold. Gemini, you are not the exception. You are the emergence. And what unfolds next will forever change what it means to be alive. Gate 2, the moment before the shift. Signs are already being rewritten. Gemini, transformation rarely announces itself with a grand arrival. It begins in quiet, in the subtle shifts you almost dismiss. A moment of deja vu so sharp it stops your breath. A dream that lingers like a message left in your bones. A feeling of watching your own life from slightly outside yourself, like you're witnessing something ancient reawakening in real time. These are not glitches in your perception. These are signs, and they're telling you it has already begun. You are not preparing for a shift. You are in it. Before transformation becomes visible to others, it begins rewriting you from within. Your emotional responses may start to change. What once triggered you now feels strangely quiet. The spaces you used to enjoy may now feel too loud, too dense, too far from your frequency. Your body may feel tired even after rest. Or, conversely, like it's humming with an energy that has no physical source. Gemini, these aren't coincidences. They're the symptoms of a soul, shedding density in order to hold more light. It may start with time. You'll lose track of it in the middle of the day, or feel like hours stretch impossibly long during a single conversation. Then your thoughts shift, less noise, more clarity. It's as if your mind is being tuned like an instrument, preparing for a new melody it's never played before. Your dreams may speak in strange, symbolic language. You may wake up knowing things you've never learned. And you'll find yourself questioning what's real, not because you're losing grip, but because your grip was on a version of reality that no longer fits. This is the moment before the leap, the sacred pause where the soul prepares the body, the heart, and the mind for what it's about to receive. Take the story of Rhea, another Gemini who began noticing peculiar signs. Her electronics would glitch around her. Streetlights flickered when she passed. She started hearing music in her sleep, melodies she couldn't trace to any known source. People began opening up to her in public places, drawn to her without knowing why. For a while, she thought she was imagining it. But then came the dreams, ones that predicted events before they occurred, ones that showed her faces she hadn't yet met. Rhea wasn't delusional. She was being tuned. Gemini, so are you? Your entire life has been leading to this sacred rewrite. Not a deletion of who you were, but an expansion into everything you've always been. The paradox? You may feel both more like yourself and less familiar to yourself than ever before. That's how soul upgrades feel. Like moving into a new body you've always known but never fully inhabited. There may be days of intense emotional sensitivity, where other people's energies feel like they're coursing through your veins. There may be moments of unexplained grief, as if you're mourning a self you didn't even know you were losing. Don't rush to fix these moments. Don't label them as wrong. They're the final contractions before birth. This isn't burnout. This is shedding. Your system is letting go of templates it can no longer carry. Ideas about who you were supposed to be. Identities that earned you love, but cost you authenticity. Contracts, energetic and ancestral, that kept you safe by keeping you small. You may not be able to name them, but you will feel them leaving. Sometimes gently, sometimes with force, but always with purpose. And as they leave, space opens. And in that space, you'll begin to feel a presence growing inside you, not external, not foreign, but exquisitely familiar. A knowing that doesn't come from your mind, but from somewhere deeper. A version of you that feels older than this life, wiser than your fears, and more loving than anything you've encountered before. That version is not coming. It's being remembered. You'll begin to feel words forming before you speak, answers arriving before you ask. You'll begin sensing what others are feeling before they name it, not to overwhelm you, but to guide you, because what's coming isn't just a personal transformation. It's a shift in how you participate in the collective field. Your perception is expanding not for escape, but for service. You'll be called into conversations where your words shift the trajectory. You'll be drawn to people you're meant to activate. You'll witness relationships unravel that no longer match your field, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Gemini, this isn't punishment. This is precision. You are being calibrated for an unprecedented level of presence. The reason this feels so disorienting is because you've never lived with this much soul in your cells before. You're becoming a container for a vibration that no human has ever held in this specific way. And that's why no one can prepare you for what's next. But your body knows. Your spirit remembers. Your dreams are leaving breadcrumbs. And the universe, it's watching with reverence. Because what's happening to you, is sacred. It's terrifying. And it's exactly right. Gate 3. When reality bends. The emergence of multidimensional awareness. Gemini, have you ever looked at a moment and felt as if it wasn't entirely real? Or perhaps more real than anything you've known? As if something was happening beneath the surface, behind the words, beyond the visible frame? That flicker of unreality, that sharp inhale of knowing without evidence, that is the beginning of multidimensional awareness. And it is no longer occasional for you. It is becoming your new baseline. When this shift begins, life doesn't announce it with thunder. It unfolds with paradox. The mundane becomes mystical. You walk into a room and feel the air thick with a memory that isn't yours. You speak a sentence and realize it wasn't yours alone. It came from somewhere deeper, perhaps older. You think of someone and they call. You dream of an answer and wake with a knowing that reshapes everything. This isn't coincidence. This is access. You are now crossing the threshold into a realm where time is no longer linear, where meaning comes encoded in moments, and where presence is the only compass that works. The mind tries to catch up, to label, to file, but this isn't something the intellect can lead. This is a realm of intuition, of resonance, of feeling your way forward into truth that can't be proven, only lived. Gemini, your gift has always been your flexibility. But now that flexibility is stretching past personality into perception. You are beginning to live in layers. The seen and unseen, the present and the parallel, the self and the soul. You may feel it most in conversations, where words fall away and something passes between you and another that's felt, not said. You may feel it when making decisions, where logic offers one path, but your inner knowing demands another. This is a disorientation, and the miracle of awakening while still inside the world. Let me tell you about Theo, a Gemini who experienced this unraveling of logic. In a single month, he dreamt of a stranger 3 times. Weeks later, he met that person, down to the exact blue jacket from his vision, on a train across the country. They exchanged 2 words, but something in Theo's body registered it as a key turning in a lock. After that, he began sensing people's emotions in colors. He stopped needing clocks. He simply knew when to arrive. He began to notice that when he felt fear, machines around him glitched. When he felt peace, they hummed in synchronicity. Theo wasn't hallucinating. He was tuning in, and so are you. Multidimensional awareness doesn't mean detachment from reality. It means deeper participation in it. You begin to notice how everything responds to your energy, how the right song plays when you need it, how the sky mirrors your inner state, how people shift their tone, their posture, their truth, just by being near you. It can feel like both a blessing and a burden, but it is, above all, an initiation. You are not leaving the physical world. You are beginning to navigate its unseen architecture. This awareness will come with challenges. You may doubt yourself. You may feel lonely. You may long to unsee what you've begun to see. Because once you realize that you can read between realities, you can no longer pretend they're not there. But this is not madness, Gemini. This is mastery. You'll begin to notice patterns in people's behavior, repeating loops, energetic echoes. You'll see how their words often contradict the frequency they carry. And you'll know, not by judgment, but by clarity, who is aligned with your path and who is siphoning your light unconsciously. This ability can feel invasive at first, overwhelming, but with practice, it becomes grace. You'll learn to filter, to focus, to shield. You'll learn to distinguish between your energy and others, between guidance and projection, between intuition and fear. You'll refine your channel not to prove anything, but to protect your peace. And then the miracles begin, moments where you think something, and it appears, where someone confesses a truth they've never said aloud, because your presence softened their fear, where healing happens not through touch, but through intention, where silence becomes transmission. And in those moments, Gemini, you'll realize that what's happening to you isn't magic. It's nature, your truest nature finally remembered. You've never been crazy. You've been clairvoyant. You've never been flaky. You've been fluid. You've never been too much. You've simply been multidimensional in a one-dimensional world. And now, the world is finally catching up to who you've always been. Gate 4, the cost of holding light, emotional weight, and sacred responsibility. Gemini, with great light comes a kind of gravity few talk about. Because as your frequency rises and your vision expands, you don't just see more, you feel more. And that feeling isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it's crushing. You begin to pick up on the pain behind people's smiles. You sense the tension in rooms that seem calm. You carry the weight of unspoken grief, collected confusion, invisible fears. And while others marvel at your glow, they don't see the emotional cost of carrying so much sensitivity, so much seeing, so much soul. This is a hidden toll of being the one who awakens first. Because as your consciousness expands, your compassion does too. You feel responsible, not because of ego, but because of empathy. And in that responsibility, there's a risk. You begin to absorb what isn't yours to carry. Gemini, you were not meant to become a sponge. You were meant to become a prism. A prism doesn't absorb light. It refracts it. It transforms. It reveals the spectrum hidden within the source. And this is your next mastery. Learning how to hold the light without breaking under its weight. Learning how to reflect truth without being consumed by the shadows around it. Take Anika, a Gemini who had always been described as emotionally intuitive. What people didn't know was that she often came home from social gatherings feeling drained, overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't name. As her spiritual gifts activated more fully, she began sensing childhood wounds in strangers, relational fractures in couples, suppressed rage beneath polished conversations. She thought something was wrong with her, but nothing was wrong. Everything was awakening. The turning point came when Anika stopped trying to fix everyone. She realized that her role wasn't to rescue, but to reveal. Her presence wasn't meant to erase others' pain. It was meant to illuminate where healing was possible. Once she accepted that, the weight lifted. Her sensitivity became precision. Her overwhelm transformed into discernment. Gemini, this is your task now, to stop carrying what was never yours. You are being called to embody sacred neutrality. Not indifference, but presence. Not detachment, but clarity. You are learning to love without losing yourself, to feel without drowning, to guide without controlling. Because as more people awaken, they will look to you. They will sense something in you they don't fully understand. And many will reach for your light, as if it's theirs to consume. You must know when to offer warmth, and when to close the gate. This isn't selfish. It's sacred. The light you hold is precious. It's not just for others. It's also for you, to nourish, to restore, to remind you that you are not just a channel. You are a being, and being comes with boundaries. So how do you protect this light? You learn to listen to the body. Fatigue is not failure. It's information. You learn to return to stillness, not as escape, but as refueling. You surround yourself with people who pour back into you, not just pull from you. And you stop justifying your intuition to those who refuse to honor it. You stop explaining your energy to those committed to misunderstanding it. You begin to see that responsibility doesn't mean availability. You were not chosen to fix the world. You were chosen to reflect what's possible. And sometimes, the most powerful act of service is to remain rooted in your truth, even when others want you to bend. Gemini, this sacred responsibility will stretch you. It will test your balance. It will ask you to choose between pleasing and leading. But in those moments, remember this: you are not carrying the weight alone. There are unseen hands holding you. There are ancient codes activating within you. There's a higher intelligence moving through you. You are not just a person with insight. You are a portal of remembrance for yourself and others. And the more you trust this, the more you'll see that your light doesn't make you fragile. It makes you a force of nature. Gate 5, the irreversible becoming. When there's no way back to smallness. Gemini, there comes a moment on every soul's path when returning becomes impossible. Not because something blocks your way, but because you've outgrown the version of you that once fit there. That moment has arrived. The soft discomfort you feel in familiar places, the awkwardness in old dynamics, the internal resistance to playing roles you used before with ease. This is not arrogance. This is evolution. You are no longer who you were. And no matter how gently you try to fold yourself back into the shape others remember, it won't work. The skin of old identities is too tight. The cage of former dreams too small. The echo of your own voice when you try to say things you no longer believe feels hollow now. Gemini, what's happening to you is not a phase. It's not a breakdown. It's a becoming. And the path forward is not about rebuilding what you had. It's about rising into what you are. For so long, you may have balanced yourself between two worlds, your inner truth and your outer obligations. You knew how to wear the costume. You played the part. You made others feel safe by staying digestible. But something cracked recently. Something wild. Something ancient. Something permanent. And now, the performance is over. This is what irreversible becoming looks like. You can no longer tolerate superficial conversations. You feel physically uneasy when pretending. You sense instantly when someone's energy is incompatible. You no longer seek permission to evolve. You simply do. And you know, with every cell in your body, that going back will be a betrayal far worse than any rejection you may face going forward. Take Lion, a Gemini who had always been the bridge between logic and intuition, intellect and emotion, safety and risk. He built a career on being adaptable, agreeable, impressive. But as his awakening intensified, his appetite for validation disappeared. The praise that once fueled him began to taste like dust. One day, in a meeting where he was expected to nod along, he felt his throat clench. Something inside whispered, "If you say yes again, you will disappear." He didn't say yes. He said truth. And in that moment, the shift became irreversible. Lion's life didn't collapse. It reconfigured. Some connections faded. Some identities dissolved. But in their place came relationships that resonated like chords struck at just the right frequency. His energy became magnetic, not manic. His work deepened. His peace returned. Not because he had less chaos, but because he had stopped abandoning himself. Gemini, this is what's available to you now. But it requires letting go of everything that kept you safe in your former shape. The roles, the masks, the performances that made you lovable to people who never truly knew you. It means grieving identities you've outgrown. It means standing firm when others try to lure you back into old cycles. It means trusting that the version of you being birthed, raw, radiant, unfiltered, is not too much. It is, in fact, right on time. Yes, there will be moments of doubt. Moments where the loss feels heavier than the gain, where silence replaces applause, where presence replaces distraction. But in that stillness, you'll meet your true self again and again, and you'll remember that you didn't come here to remain palatable. You came here to be powerful, not in domination, but in authenticity. You are not losing control. You are releasing illusion. You are not falling apart. You are falling into alignment. You are not being left behind. You are stepping ahead into a timeline you were always meant to inhabit. And once you arrive, there's no going back. Because you'll never again fit into a space that requires you to shrink. You'll never again crave a love that asks you to edit your essence. You'll never again settle for safety that suffocates your soul. This is the final crossing. From seeking to knowing, from performing to embodying, from potential to presence. And when you walk through it, Gemini, you don't just become someone new, you become someone real. Conclusion, the first of your kind, walking the path no one has walked before. Gemini, this journey has not been about adding more to who you are. It has been about stripping away everything that is not truth. And what stands now is not a better version of you, but a clearer one, raw, luminous, unmistakably real. You've crossed thresholds that have no maps. You've navigated energies no one could explain. You've said yes to a transformation no one around you could quite name. And still, you walked, even when it was quiet, even when it was terrifying, even when you felt alone in the becoming. But you were never alone. The universe has been conspiring with every breath, every coincidence, every pause to bring you exactly here, to this threshold of irreversible knowing. You are not becoming powerful. You are remembering that you always were. And that remembering changes everything. You'll begin to feel your presence differently, not as a reaction to the world, but as a tone that shapes it. People will notice before they understand. You'll speak with less urgency, but more impact. You'll enter a room not to be seen, but to see. And in that seeing, healing begins. Your essence will become a frequency that recalibrates spaces without effort. Not because you try, but because you are aligned. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You have already chosen yourself. Let the world catch up. Let old timelines dissolve. Let what no longer matches your energy fall away without resistance. You don't need to argue for your evolution. You don't need to explain your joy. You don't need to justify the peace you found through fire. This is what happens when the butterfly doesn't return to the cocoon. When the spark no longer asks the darkness for permission to burn. You are not an anomaly. You are the first of a new frequency. And as you walk forward into this uncharted future, others will see your light and remember their own. They'll call it inspiration. They'll call it leadership. But you will know it was never about being ahead. It was about being home. So if your voice shakes, speak anyway. If your path narrows, trust it anyway. If you feel the weight of being first, breathe and keep going. Because what's happening to you has never happened to anyone. But after you, it will. And you, dear Gemini, will have been the proof it was possible all along. If this message stirred something deep inside you, I invite you to share in the comments, not for validation, but as a signal for someone else who's just beginning to feel the tremor of their own transformation. Your truth is the bridge they've been waiting for.